Right. Right. Ready? Ready?
Yeah, I think we are
All
ready,
right.
Ready?
Jason.
All right. Cool. All right. Good evening, everybody. Both in Sydney and Manila as well, and everyone that's listening. Thanks for listening to the meetup webinar style. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jason Lee, Director of QA with Freelancer, and today I'll share our journey on how do we do exploratory testing at Freelancer with my teammates, Myron, who he's based in Manila with the rest of the QAs. I will pass on to him to introduce himself as well as for him to kick off this talk.
All right. Over here in Manila, I am Myron Dizon, currently a web QA for Freelancer.com, and then I am part of the product team that works on user trust and user safety. But previously, I was part of the QA group that drove the initiative of exploratory testing in the company. So on the next slide, let me paint you a picture of how we do testing at Freelancer. So we have non-automated tests, which consists of availability testing, functional testing, sanity testing, functional testing, etc. Product QAs like me perform those tests prior to shipping new releases into production. And then we have automated tests. We run E2E tests on dev prior to shipping new releases into staging and into production. Then we have a mixture of protractor tests and robot Selenium scripts that run on both staging and live production environments. And then recently, around the second half of 2019 last year, we were able to roll out exploratory testing as an approach to validate the releases that we put out into production. So on the next slide, we'll tell you a journey of how ET was rolled out at freelancer.com. At the start, the company had a paradigm shift of moving away from the notion of move fast, break things into a quality-oriented engineering practice so that we don't have a bad quality product to deliver to our customers. I'll hand over back to Jason to discuss how he rolled out ET in freelancer.com.
Yep. So as Mara mentioned, the need to shift away from moving fast, breaking things culture led me to introduce the expert testing starting from the QA team itself. So initially, we have our first internal session, walking through the ET concepts, trying out different funnels within the team, within QA team itself, which I will share the nice photos, snapshots that we managed to capture during the session. And then after that session, we managed to iterate several sessions with several product managers involvement as well as the CX team. CX team in Freelancer refers to the customer experience team who face the customer on a daily basis. So this is some photos that we managed to capture during our first internal run of exploratory testing in Manila, where you can see the groups of all the QAs that comes together and have this time box session, having fun, exploring different funnels, different contexts of the website throughout, and obviously have some discussion, very very serious discussions based on the photos itself. Then after that, in August, we also roll out the ET sessions across wider audience throughout the organization itself. So we ramp up the ET session as one of the activities in our in our quarterly activities in the company, which is Bagaton, where this is where we started to lay the foundation of ET across the organization. From this outing, we managed to capture the key learnings, both good and bad, to apply to improve our existing ET processes. Then this is followed by later on where we try to introduce a few more improvements along the ET process, where we conducted a few sessions with the QAs sitting within the product team. So what happened in Freelancer, basically that we have over 20 QAs that sits across in a different agile tribes with the product teams, and we have team leads that work across overlooking some of these pieces of the puzzle throughout the website. And throughout this November timeframe, we managed to basically get more input from these iterations to formalize the ET processes throughout. And this year, more so and beyond, we are embedding ET as part of the software development lifecycle workflow, and more so as a culture to embrace, to continuously improving the quality engineering best practices and processes in Freelancer. I will pass on to Myron for the next part of the slides.
So how do we do ET at freelancer.com? Basically, you just need three things in order to have that session. You need to have a testing charter, which outlines the scope of testing. So that includes a part of the whole E2E path where participants of that ET session can explore into. And then that testing charter includes the documentation of what the participants are able to find during that exploration and the bugs that will be validated by the ET coordinator, which is currently the product QA for that session. Then we do those sessions in a time box manner. So we run them by either 30-minute, 45-minute, or 1 hour long. Then at the start of the session, the ET coordinator will brief the participants of what to test, the objectives of testing, and then when the session has ended, the group will have a debriefing session of what were the findings and what are the issues that need to be ticketed for the product teams to fix. On the logistics part, we have recently delegated the responsibility of organizing and coordinating of the ET sessions to the product QAs. We found out that triaging and validating those issues took a lot of time. So we made that move to have the product QAs within the product teams to drive that ET initiative. So what did we find? So on the next slide, we have discovered 200 plus bugs from the 10 to 20 sessions that we had last year. So that already is 5% of all total filed bugs during last year. And we found these bugs in just a short amount of time. On the next slide, we'll show you the data of those 200 bugs. Granted that these figures were taken from a sample of those 200 plus bugs. So on the top left of your screen, you can see a pie chart that illustrates the taxonomy of bugs from a sample of ticketed bugs from the sessions that we had last year. Based on this data, we discovered that the issues that were present in our platform had functional issues which didn't match to user expectations. We also discovered that the UX UI issues, which supports our goal of making the platform usable for our customers. Then we also identified issues that were indicative of possible gaps in requirements prior to development and several data-related issues such as information not being consistent with the site. Mind you, this is not pertaining to sensitive information, but rather a copy in this part is not consistent with other parts of the site. I cannot reveal to you what kind of issues we discovered, so I'll just leave it at that. On the bottom right of your screen, we have discovered at least one critical bug from those sessions. Granted, this is just a sample from the whole. This just proves that the ET sessions that were happening last year has positive ROI in making our product quality and better for our customers. I'm going to hand over back to Jason to discuss the challenges of having these sessions last year.
Thanks, Myron. So I will just briefly touch some points about the challenges of a journey of ET. First of all, basically the coordination of product teams, as Myron mentioned earlier on in the previous slide, where it tends to a bit hard for us to basically to coordinate timely within the ET sessions across the teams, and more so it tends to be slowing down the release processes from the product perspective. from the hindsight. So it requires pre-planning where we need to plan out the devices, the setup, the scopes, and whatnot. So we overcome this challenge by basically having expectations where we set like a week, at least a week before prior to the ET sessions, to have the team to request for ET sessions to be conducted upfront, so that the coordinator could actually come up with the list of the scopes, specific scopes and devices for the testing. And then secondly, the second challenges of ET that we face in our journey is basically the duplicated issues that we found. So as you can see earlier on in the chart, where you can see that there are mismatch of the requirements type of bugs, as well as UI UX, we have these challenges where the issues found during ET sessions they were exist before, and it wasn't really fixed for a while ago, and we call it as a legacy bug. So we overcome this by basically having these data points to push back to the products again, saying that, hey, there's a gap here, where's the requirements, and what is right, what is wrong here, and we can iterate also the pains faced by the customers. And when I say customer, means that the participants of the ET session, which consists of the product teams itself, or even the CX team, which wears the head as customers. So we try to overcome this challenge of duplicated issues also through making sure that they cross-check the existing bugs in the system prior to ticketing the bugs. Thirdly, when we have the challenges of the journey, basically the triaging issue takes time. As Myron mentioned, it used to take a long lead time to basically to triage all the issues after the session. However, with the nominating of the product coordinator within the product team, helps speed up a lot of the time basically to triage the issues within the team, at most within the sprint itself. And then finally, we face a pushback from the team, from the product team itself, where ET might not be, why should I do that? Why should we do that as a product manager or as an engineer? Why are we involved in this ET? That should be the QA job. But over the times, we overcome this through several iterations, as I mentioned earlier on in the journey, where we prove again and again that the data, that the bugs that we found basically is valuable and valid, basically replicating what the customers facing issues before they slip into production. So in summary, I'd like you guys to take away this story, basically these 3 points. Basically, first of all, from these ET sessions that we have in journey of in Freelancer, first of all, it helps us to build that culture of cultivating faster feedback loop to the products. So it means that we are able to provide the found issues as much as early as possible, as we are taking the paradigm shift of shift left these days. Secondly, we are able to pick up bugs, not pick up from the scripted testing. So a lot, as you can see from the chart itself again, a lot of bugs that we found from ET sessions will not be possible to capture through the scripted testing, which relies heavily based on the requirements. And then finally, the ET session provides a platform for everyone to learn the products and have fun. And basically, we have gathered a lot of feedback from the participants, both within the QA product teams as well as the CX team as well, that they have a lot of fun, and we have to stop them from being tempted to spend too much time over the time box session, so that we can move on to the debriefing session. So I hope from this talk sharing of our journey of the ET at Freelancer will be able to inspire all of you and apply this at your workplace. And it's all for one of the best tools that we can use to drive the quality engineering best practices across organization. With this, I will end the talk with Q&A. Any question?
Hi, question.
Oh, we have a question here in Manila.
What is the um, is it really ideal just to have the ET to be done around 30 to 45 minutes since for let's say if you are testing a specific if you are testing a specific funnel or a specific part of that product, sometimes people would still be more on what do you call this? They still have a hard time on the expectations of the product. Sometimes they don't know it too much. So would you say that maybe extending the session would be better? Not saying that it would be around 2 hours, but let's say around uh, an hour and then just 15 minutes debriefing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point of extending these ED sessions. But the matter of the fact is, we have stuff to do. We have a lot of things to do in our day-to-day work. So limiting it to 30 minutes ideally should be able to maximize the ROI of ED as an approach. So I'm gonna say yes, but it really just depends on the workload of your day-to-day work.
Yeah,
In that sense,
yeah, and also
sorry.
I like to add as well. Sorry, sorry.
Sorry. In that sense, would you say that a 1 week's notice is sufficient enough for all the teams that wants to participate in the ET session um, is good because as you've mentioned that if we do want to uh, fully maximize the session, 1 week's notice is enough because apparently most of the teams have also a very fast turnaround time for doing their own releases and features. So, do you think that's sufficient, or like maybe 2 weeks notice is best so that they can also include it in their sprint planning?
When you say 1 week means
Jason,
that,
would you like to take this one?
yeah.
Yeah.
So can you clarify what do you mean by 1 week? As in the session to be conducted throughout the 1 week, or
So let's say we wanted to do the ET session for a specific product. It was mentioned before in the talk that you would want to have it like 1 week's notice. So let's say
okay.
our product is going to release something.
Yep.
We'll do the ET session next week. So all I'm saying is, would you think it would be better to have it like 2 weeks notice before so that the teams that are currently doing multiple releases in a week should be able to include it in their sprint planning as well and not just really a separate day for doing the ET session.
Yep.
Because as per my observation, most of the teams are proactive with the ET. It's just that it needs to be included in the sprint as well. So
Yep.
I think that should be considered.
Yep, I agree. To some point, we require an advance, like longer time lead period, before the ET session. Specifically for like, for example, like recently we have pages that we want to migrate the web app. Obviously, this needs advance time notification for the teams outside the product team to conduct the ET session. But for the product teams that within the product team itself, I would say that 1 week is sufficient enough. Yeah. Does that answer a question?
Uh, yeah, Jason, thank you.
Any
Thank you.
else? Okay. Cool.
Do we have audio? Am I well, thank you, Freelancer, for putting on that talk. And as you can see, we've co-presented this talk from both Manila and Sydney. We are live streaming this talk via Twitch. I apologize for the low sound quality coming through on Twitch. I am live streaming off a mobile phone because I couldn't get it to work on my Mac. We are recording it, and there will be a higher quality video up on YouTube after we've finished recording this talk and have gotten it online. So thank you for that talk from both Jason and and Freelancer. I'm sorry. And I would like to hand over to Chaitanya now, who is presenting on just giving an overview of Cypress for web automation. If there are any issues with sound or audio, please let me know. I think, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
So yeah, just select and then.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll start that. We'll see how that goes.
Okay. Cool. Hi everybody. Hello everybody in Manila as well and Sydney. Good evening to everybody. So today I'm just going to talk about some introduction to Cypress.io, what we've been doing with Cypress and how do we get started with it, or like why do we need basically Cypress? We have so many tools in the market for doing web automation. Why specifically Cypress? So as I said, this talk is about what exactly is Cypress, how to get started, and why do we choose it, or when should we actually choose it. As you all know, and as you all are aware, this is a typical testing pyramid we have. We have UI tests, which sit at the top and which are pretty slow, costly. They take a lot of time to execute. They're flaky. There's a lot of turnaround time for that. Better than them are the integration tests, which sit in between UI and unit. And of course, unit tests sit at the bottom. They're the fastest. They're easier to maintain. They don't rely on a lot of external environments, which the UI tests rely on. And most of the heavy lifting is done within the unit tests as they work on it and they know what has been gone in the code. So the bulk of the testing happens over there. Now, the idea that our end-to-end tests or UI tests are slow and flaky is really challenged by Cypress. Cypress takes the execution of all these test code that we are writing, the test code that we are writing, into the browser, rather than having a server in which we send our test code to run and that executes in a browser. Cypress actually executes all of it within the DOM. So it brings down the flakiness, it increases the speed, it gives in reliability. It always is going to give you a definite result, and it doesn't get slowed down by external environmental factors, as it always executes in the browser DOM. Now, this is how the traditional. So if you look on the left hand side, what was happening before Cypress? So you would have Selenium at the heart of everything. You would have a test framework, say Mocha, Karma, Jasmine. There would be a Selenium wrapper with a WebDriver, protractor, and you would need additional assertion libraries, maybe Chai or Expect, or maybe even a set of mocking libraries called for Synon or Test Double. All of this you would then combine and form a test framework. Now, imagine the amount of time you're spending to build all of this, to get started with Mocha, and then to add an assertion library for Chai, and then you do your stubbing and spying with Synon. So all of this is saved if once we switch over to Cypress. It's all in one testing framework. It's a fork of Mocha. It uses the same syntax as what we use to write simple Mocha tests. The same syntax is used in Jest. Jest has the same syntax. So we are working in a very familiar territory to what devs are. We are getting closer to the dev environment. And we don't have to work up any additional, we don't have to do any additional effort to bring in all these different aspects of a testing framework to come and work together. Now, this is, I just took this off from their site. Setting up on a Cypress is very, very simple. It is the easiest thing I've ever done. You just go, once Node is installed on your machine, you just do npm install Cypress in your Node project, and boom, you would have Cypress set up. there, right there within your project completely. You would have samples, you would have um, the config, you would have a config JSON, a Cypress JSON as well. Everything right there within once you do an npm install. Now, this is how a simple Cypress test looks. For those people who have worked with Mocha or who are familiar with how Jest works, this would be very, very familiar code. At the start, you would see a describe. A describe is nothing but when you want to combine a set of tests together. Say if I want to describe a scenario, or if I want to describe what I'm trying to, I'm trying to say test a login page, or if I'm trying to test a particular um, functional flow, then I would start with describe. It is nothing but a test case. So I'm saying that I want to do an end-to-end test, and the first thing I want to do is does it log in? Now, the core of Cypress is nothing but this CY object. It is an access to the to all the methods for Cypress. So cy.visit is as simple as anybody would, I mean, would like to understand. It's just visiting a particular URL. So you would visiting a login page. Get is again like you would get elements from the page, and clicking or again getting. They're all very much self-explanatory kind of methods that Cypress has. What is interesting is if you see the should is nothing but the assertions that come bundled within Cypress. So I'm not sure if you guys are across with BDD assertions or TDD assertions, in which we basically check different contents of the DOM, and should is a way to actually do an assertion using on different aspects within the DAM. So if I am looking for certain element, and if I'm looking for a text within that element, I would just say should have dot text. So this is all easily accessible. You don't have to add any more libraries or any more npm packages to your project. Okay, let's get to the demo.
I have to zoom in enhance.
Yes, there we go. Is it working? Yeah, that's good. All right.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
I'll probably kill the terminal and start again. So this is a simple kind of a book, of viewing a book application that I have set up, which has a set of books in it. It uses a pug, which is an HTML, or like an abstraction markup language for HTML. So this is how simple the HTML is. What it does is basically shows a login page, and once you click on login, you don't have to give any real data to it, but just logs in and shows you a set of books. So if I do an npm start, that's our login page. So the objective is to just show you guys how simple it is to write a test in Cypress. My goal is to write add a test, and then 1, 2, 3, and then just log in and just see these and verify whether I have got these set of elements or books rendered on the page. Coming to code. So whenever Cypress is installed, you would have a Cypress folder created for you. In that, all your tests lie in a folder called as integration. You've got plugins, you've got support, and you've got fixtures. All of them are different aspects of Cypress, which would need a separate session, would a deep dive. But since we are doing an introductory session, I'll just walk you through what the code is doing. So as we saw earlier in the slide, this is a simple test in which I'm just trying to show how Cypress testing works. My goal is to log the user in. I've got a cy.visit, which visits the login page. Then it has a bunch of get commands and typing in password and username, clicking on button. And at the end is when the assertion comes in. I go to the li for book and check whether the length is 3. So I need to see if I have 3 books with me.
Is that really what it's testing? The 3 entries?
Sorry?
Is it just 3 rows? What? Length of what?
A length of the number of books, or the length of the rows that I have.
The number of rows.
Yes. So basically the idea is that if I add more, so if I show you the books bug, so this is if I add more books in here, it will just increment the number of rows. So my assertion logic will be incrementing the length. So if I launch and run Cypress.
But Matt, are you trying to make some other point? I'm not sure there's some other point you're trying to make.
Well, you're saying that you're testing your 3 books, but actually just showing that you have 3 rows in that table. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not verifying whether the HTML actually is showing my books anything, because I can do that, but that's not the objective of the demo right now.
Yep, sure.
So this is the Cypress test launcher, basically. So this is when you launch. So there is 2 ways to run Cypress. One's using this launcher, and the other is using a headless mode, which is Cypress run. I'll show you both. For this, I'll cover first the launcher. Now, Cypress initially was supporting only Chrome and Electron. Recently, they have added support for Firefox and all the Chrome family browsers. So if you see the drop-down, I can run the same test on Chrome, whatever version you have installed, Firefox, and including Microsoft's Edge. So now Microsoft Edge is also available on Mac. So for so long, you couldn't access any Microsoft-based built browsers on Mac, but now Edge being released on being built in Chromium, you can actually access that. Let's say if I want to run with the default test in the test in the default browser, which is Electron. I just click on the spec, and you would see that it finished off in a just like that. So what has happened in this is we can actually see at different points what is exactly happening. We can actually walk through the test. But the interesting aspect of Cypress is it can actually show you the number of, it can actually show do a live reload. Say, increase the number of tests kept in memory. Now, what is happening is I'm doing a time travel. I'm actually checking at every point what is happening. So it clicks there, it types in test, then it clicks on password, and then types in test 1, 2, 3. And then it gets this button, it is submitting the form, and finally it is verifying this. So this beauty of time travel is a USP for Cypress. It actually helps to see at different points what verification is happening. The same thing I can do for Firefox. And again, I can see the DOM state at different points. This time traveling really helps me to see. This is especially useful when you're trying to write a new test and it's failing at different points. You'd really like to know what is happening at this particular instance. Another beautiful part of this particular Cypress launcher or test runner is the selector playground. Now, I just want to see what basically is the CSS selector for this. I can directly hover over the element that I want, and Cypress returns me what should the code be for that particular element. I'll go back in and I can straight away use the code in my spec file.
So this is a Cypress interface.
Yes. I can stop, and the same test I can toggle to edge. Boom. Now we are confident enough that we have run our set of tests on different browsers, at least 4, if not Safari, if like if you don't include Safari, but at least 4 different kind of browsers. Yes, they are from the same Chrome family, but they are different like set of browsers. So we've got enough confidence now that our app is going to work across. Cypress also supports viewports. So if I stop this and I say viewport, say 500 by 300, and oops, go back in, change it to electron, and change the viewport 500 by 300. So these are all presets. I can define all of these values in the core JSON file called as cypress.json, and it will read these values beforehand. I can also dynamically set them, just as the way you saw in the code. That's what I've done. Let's take this off. Now, one of the important thing that the Cypress team recommends is that we should use selectors in such a way. Now, if you see these selectors, I'm just using them as say class names and input. I'm trying to locate the CSS selectors. But what they push for is using test selectors specifically for writing tests, so that it decreases the flakiness for the test. I'll give you an example. Like for example, supposedly the dev comes in and changes this input from username to just name, and I go back to my test. Hey, it was working. Boom, it stopped. Now, how do I address this issue? What the team recommends, or what is a good practice, is to have something called data test ID equals.
So having a test element.
Yep.
But for complex UI, that's going to be difficult, right? You to manually create test elements for everything.
That's the reason we shouldn't have complex UI. UI has to be down.
Mm.
So that is our goal.
Right.
So
but I mean, there could be like a container or something,
yes.
Could be a plugin or something like that,
yep.
which might make it tough.
Yep.
In some cases, I've seen if you're using like an enterprise application,
yep.
Salesforce.
Yep. Yep.
Which
yep.
might make it difficult.
Yes. Yep. Yep. I mean, that is correct. That is right. But having said that, if we are into building new components, we should probably sit across with the dev team and try and understand how do we incorporate these test elements in. Of course, this increases the HTML that gets rendered, but there are different ways to reduce the size of the HTML that gets rendered actually for the production. We can just have the test IDs for the test side, and we can filter out all these test IDs for production. But it should not be an issue, actually.
Got a question on Twitch. What does that say? This type of demonstration is better off the laptop. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is really hard. We tried streaming off the off the laptop, just wasn't working. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep an
Oh,
eye
so
on-
everyone's seeing this. We're the only
Yeah.
ones seeing that.
Oh,
Yeah, so
right.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Should I zoom in more?
Of the live.
Is it this that needs to move closer?
No,
No?
it's just because it's off a mobile device. The live stream is the quality is going to be poor, but we are going to issue a higher quality video on YouTube once we've recorded it.
I tried to zoom in more. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's helping, but yeah. So if I now go back to my login spec and say, hey, I don't want, but then again, why do I have to search for selectors? I would just reload the test. I would open up the selector playground. Oh, come on. Let it fail. Selector playground, and there we go. I just copy from it. I don't have to wait. I don't have to actually go to the browser and see. Now, if I save this, if you see, Cypress starts running it automatically. So I don't have to say, okay, run. There is no run. It starts running automatically. It's constantly watching for the file changes, and it's constantly looking for a change. This has got really good advantages that you don't have to worry that whether my test is going to run or what is going to happen. It will immediately try to run. If you really have syntax issues in your, should I? Just,
No, it's fine.
there we go. This is much better on the screen. Okay.
It's not going to improve that much.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's only because we've got the mobile device on a tiny TV, and it's
Right.
just like bad on top of bad.
All right. Okay. Other thing, just before moving back to our slides, if you can see that there is a number called 83 that comes up. This is nothing but inherent auto scaling that Cypress implements depending upon the screen resolution that your device is on. So, and it also depends upon if you're running it at maximized level. So if I do this, it changes to 100%. Just now getting back to our slides. And now, once you got a hang of how this system works, how Cypress is working, it's very hard to not give it a go and start implementing it. What I think why we should try Cypress is because, first of all, it is written in JavaScript, and that's the language of the front end. It's going to remain the language of the front end till probably some time at least. It uses a fork of Mocha, and a lot of developers are already working on Jest, Mocha. So then they are already aware of the syntax that is going to go when we write the test. So we don't become like the owners of all the tests, we become collaborators. That is a change in role, that is a change in definition of how tests are being written, added, maintained. Because it becomes easier for us to go to devs and explain what's going on, or rather we don't even have to go to them to explain what's going on. They would just dig in themselves. And I've experienced this personally myself, wherein front-end devs would just go into Cypress tests and see what's going on. If there is any problem with the test, they would also fix the tests as part of any feature change that is happening. It has got a very clean and easier way of writing tests. Everything revolves around a CY object. You have just got a bunch of describe and its. If you see the site for Cypress documentation, it's amazing. I can just give you a glimpse. I'm pretty sure most of you would have already gone through. So yeah, it's got really everything in it. You got API, you got plugins, you got examples. I think you got their kitchen sink examples are really good, really helpful.
Have you had any issues with redirects or iframes?
I have. I'm coming to that.
Okay. That was just a question off the live stream. So
yes.
thanks
All
for
right.
that,
Okay.
Catherine.
Thank you for raising that. Yes. So I was going to come to that. Yeah. I mean, every kind of tool will have certain pros and cons. Part of cons of using Cypress is like no out-of-box support for parallelization, or as you mentioned, iframes, or file upload. But there are various reasons why they don't support that. They have got explanation. They have got the long GitHub discussions for that. There's certainly parallelization support with the freemium model that they offer, so which is called as the dashboard service. So if you go with the dashboard service, you should be able to get the support for parallelization.
Thanks for that recommendation. They just put a link to the GitHub chat for Cypress.
Okay. Another reason why we should try out Cypress is it runs the code directly into the in the browser, as I mentioned earlier. It has got access to real DOM elements. It's fast, synchronous, and because of being fast, synchronous, as well as access to the real DOM elements, it deals with flakiness very well. So you would see, I wouldn't say you would be 100% off flakiness. There would be definitely something there, but the amount would be certainly very, very less.
So you still have to deal with weights and things?
In certain, only in very, very edge case scenarios, wherein if you're trying to work on a very legacy app, or it's kind of waiting on other services. So in that way, but mostly if your tests are running against mock, then there is no need for wait. We just use promises, or and since the commands are synchronous, everything is going as a queue. We can decide when the command can get fired. Another beauty, as I showed you, was the selector playground that was there. Just take a quick, the selector that you want. I mean, use a selector playground to hover around, see what the selector you want, use it. It inherently uses jQuery selectors, which is also very familiar to devs again. And they have these capabilities of using a parent, a sibling, a child, or a first, or children. All of these are very, very helpful. And you don't have to wait for the tests to finish and see. Sorry, I mean, what I mean is that you don't have to go somewhere else to see or do any additional effort for debugging. You can directly debug through the Chrome DevTools. The errors are very readable, and the stack traces makes debugging very easy. As shown, we have as I showed in the demo, Cypress does time travel, does real-time reloads, and does support different browsers, but currently limited to Chrome family.
Can you save the time travel logs?
Yes. So it defaults. So the way it saves is, I'll just show you, is what value you have configured in. Cypress.json. So I've said that, okay, save 20 tests in memory. So that would be saying that I want to save these many number of tests. Anything after that won't be saved. So you can travel forwards and backwards within the last 20 tests. So if you really want to understand why, or if you really want to try Cypress, just go for it. It's really a nice tool. It's got easy debuggability, live reload, time travel. What it lacks is non-Chrome family browser support, out-of-box support for parallelization, and a lot of people who are looking for browser stack and source labs integration. It's still not there, but it's in the pipeline.
I mean, like, another pro is that it's a bit easier to integrate in a CI pipeline.
It is.
Just a question we had come up on the Twitch stream.
Yep.
When you compare using Cypress with things like Selenium, Cypress is built with CI more in mind, whereas Selenium, because it was built 10 to 12 years ago before CI was an actual thing, it hasn't evolved at the same time. So the question was, how does it integrate with CI? But in the premise of time, I would encourage you to research that answer online.
Definitely, it definitely is easier to integrate in CI. Absolutely, we have done it very well, and our Cypress tests run as part of a build pipeline, so it's no issues at all. Thank you, and if there is any time for Q&A.
just have a look at any of the questions coming up in the Slack channel. I know it's a little bit hard to look at right now, but I'm going to kick off my presentation. I have to start a couple of applications and I will start sharing my screen, but you should have a few moments to answer questions on the Twitch stream or on the meetup group in the chat somehow as well. If you can monitor that one, that would be great. So I'm going to present my entire screen as well and take over from there.
So I think one comment I would make is that, I mean, JavaScript is good, but essentially I think the way it comes across, you need a developer, an SDET kind of guy. I mean, in the case of Selenium, I think you can get by without heavy programming skills, whether it's Python or Ruby or even Java.
Right,
But
right.
I think
Because it integrates with different languages. You
Yeah.
can integrate with Java, you can integrate with Python because it's got different WebDriver integration. Cypress is JavaScript only.
Yeah, but what I mean is, I think JavaScript, there is a bit of hate about JavaScript. I think, a lot of people don't really like JavaScript.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know this.
Yeah, the promises and all, it's kind of tricky, and the callbacks. So I'm saying compared to that, Ruby, Python are a bit easier.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a good thing, but I'm just saying that I think that's
Because the whole front end is inside JavaScript, so
right.
So it's
No, what I mean
it's
is
a
I
language
think,
of front end. So
I think the Cypress model is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think it may require people to kind of upskill their skill.
yeah, definitely.
We could move the camera closer, but we would lose audio because of the space of the room. I'll make sure my font is very large. I had to reboot recently, so I have to restart all of my IDEs, and they take a little bit of time to boot up. But how are we going on the meetup stream? No one's complaining to me in the conversation? Okay. I think I have camera on, microphone on.
Yep, you're coming through loud and clear.
Cool. I'm just waiting for Xcode and Android Studio to boot up. So don't mind me if they take a little bit of time. Sometimes the Gradle build takes a little bit longer than. No, actually, one of the difficulties I'm having with this presentation at the moment, the reason why I'm commenting from my desktop is because I want to show you some of the code of the app I'm working on at the moment. But to do that, I need to present from my work laptop. So we're building an app to help manage your superannuation. And Chaitanya, who was previously speaking, is on the web team as well. Sorry, we didn't quite do introductions as well as we could have.
They just apply.
Yeah, in the interest of time. So I'm on the mobile team, Chaitanya's on the web team. We're both test engineers, and we're trying to incorporate more of a shift left mentality, getting involved with quality code and trying to get more involved with writing test cases. So we're going to release this app publicly on the app stores this month, but please don't make any public announcements until after our marketing launch in April, or else Commbank might say something to me if you publicly say anything that's presented today. And I'm going to show you some of our test code because I don't think test code is really protected. It's just really a mocking framework and a whole bunch of JSON data. But still, the public speaking policy here at Commbank can be a little annoying to work around sometimes. So it looks like my Android emulator is up and running, but I'm still doing a Gradle build. Xcode is up and running too. Oh, there we go. Android Studio is telling me it's done some stuff, and it should be doing a install and launch. There we go. We've got the app up. Also, so any screens shown in this presentation aren't publicly available, but the app will be on the App Store very soon. So Colonial First State is a subsidiary of Commonwealth Bank Australia. And we're focusing on building in a lot of quality earlier in. So this is our iOS app here at the moment. And I'm going to walk you through a mocking framework we've used to help test this app. So currently, CBA will monitor all of my network traffic while I'm on the corporate network. So I'm trying to actually stream this off a hotspot off my mobile phone so I can bypass the enterprise network. But that means that this app can never talk to an internal test environment, which is a bit of a bummer. But we've built this mocking framework, so you never have to talk to an internal test environment, and it never gets in the way of developing new screens. So, for example, in our network, I can choose which environment I want to talk to. We have production and a whole bunch of integrated test environments. At the moment, I'm just going to select this little mock framework down here. Now, we have a whole bunch of profiles that are included in this mock profile that are based on different personas, what we think the different accounts might look like. I've actually monitored all of my traffic in production, intercepted all of the responses from the APIs, and added myself as a profile. So that's Saving Sammy is actually based off my test account in production. But I'm going to show you Corporate Dan's account. So Corporate Dan has an employee super account. Because this is a mock framework, all we're going to do is enter some fake login details, and the mock framework, which is built inside of the app, will give us a green light. We'll go into terms and conditions. We'll go through the registration flow. So there we go. We're set up. This is what Corporate Dan's account looks like. He's got a nice little balance. He's got a few cards, and he can look through some of his transaction history and explore. So we've been able to launch this app and not talk to a test environment, but still see how it's all rendered. Now, to build out this mocking framework, that's Android, sorry. Here we go, Xcode. Xcode, we have, so we're using Swift and Kotlin. We're using XEUI tests as well. And I had something else open around here. Where's my mock intercept anyway? I'd like to go through how we use snapshot testing as well. Okay, my zoom in enhance is not working. We use snapshot testing is a Facebook developed tool that you can integrate more easily with Swift. We don't have this built into Android just yet, but when we set the record mode to true, then we go through some of these tests. So say we wanted to see what transactions look like when they're pending and when they're not. And this will create, when in record mode, will create a screenshot, and then every time this app builds as part of its build pipeline, we'll compare the new build with the previously recorded snapshot. And it will generate a whole bunch of screenshots and test reports based on a whole bunch of things. So for example, if I want to see what those tests look like, we've got a debit and a pending transaction. Come on, Myron. I should close that one. So this is what a regular transaction looks like. It's only injected the view model. It doesn't actually render the whole view. And if we want to see what a pending transaction looks like. So every time we build, we incorporate this as part of our testing as a way to do some sort of UI automation. If the UI has changed from code commit to code commit, we'll actually get a failure case for these snapshot tests. They can load larger views. So for example, if we wanted to see what a network error looks like on a particular page, or the different portfolio scenarios. If we want to see what the portfolio renders with different mock data injected. So we use snapshot testing on iOS. We also inject a whole bunch of mock data using a mocking framework, and those profiles are under a, oh, there's the portfolio. Anyway, sorry, I'm in the wrong area. So for example, we were looking at Corporate Dan's. Corporate Dan has, when he hits his portfolio API, he gets this type of JSON response back. He has his account balance, which should be the same here, and his account details. So we're able to inject a lot of this sample data and test how the UI renders without talking to a test environment. Now, we've also done the same thing on Android, but we've made some changes to how the portfolio renders. That's the test. In Android, we use a base integration test to help pass in all of our mock JSON, which follows the same API paths. We have files in the same paths as our API data. And we have a little robot that helps build out the espresso so that when you have a test, if you're testing, say, on your transaction details, that when you load particular data, if there's no transactions, that the view displays the no transactions, so that our transaction test can look like something like portfolio. We don't have to log in. We actually start at the correct spot. We go to the dashboard. We check that the empty view and whatnot. So we can write these tests in a fairly clean way because our robot out here, this is the thing that includes all the espresso, ugly code, and all of the R elements and whatnot. And sometimes this does a couple of assertions as well. But we've got our waits until the UI is ready and a whole bunch of things there. But it means that our transaction flow test is a little bit easier to understand because it doesn't quite have all of that espresso code that can make your Android automation, can make that, it just abstracts that away for you. It's a glorified page object model, but for Android. So on Android, if on Dan's profile, I've updated his sample JSON. Where is his sample JSON? Okay, I don't have it on me. We're also using Mockito on Android to help mock out all of these responses. So good old Corporate Dan on his API, no. Connect, initialize, no. Oh, portfolio JSON. I've given Dan a slightly bigger portfolio response because I want to see how this UI renders in with a different payload. So when I put this in the center, so if I go through the same process of selecting that mock profile, we're on mock, yep, and we've got good old Corporate Dan. I'm going to say he's registered. We can also change a whole bunch of the UI from these debug settings, and these debug settings won't be exported out to our production app. So we should see a different portfolio for Dan here when he logs in for the first time. He's going to look like it's a multiple account. So there we go. So his portfolio loads and he has got a whole bunch of payload. The way we've built our mocking framework, because I haven't included a whole bunch of these things, some of these requests won't quite work. But if I'm just testing how these different views load, so you can compare this is what his general single account portfolio looks like. And I've just changed what the portfolio response looks like on the Android build. And we've also changed, I wanted to see contributions. So we've now got this new feature where you can see your last contribution now on the dashboard. So I wanted to explore how this rendered on the UI without having to go into the test environment, without having to change a whole bunch of transaction details. I can just inject the sample data that I want, see how the UI renders, and being this close to the code, it really aids in exploratory testing practices. So going back to that first talk of being able to combine technical skills and exploratory testing skills, I find to be really useful. And then when you click on that transaction, it just takes you to the credits tab. So that's how we've built mocking into both our Android and iOS apps. We inject a whole bunch of JSON, and we can render the UI based on what we want to test in a specific certain amount of time. We can use this injected JSON to also run our UI tests. We can do snapshot testing on iOS, and on Android, a lot of our UI tests also go through the same stuff. So I should be able to run that transaction flow test. Probably want to remove the breakpoint I have. And if I run that on device, we should be able to see these three test cases we've created for transactions, which is inject a empty JSON and see the views, inject a one transaction and see the views. See, empty. And then the next test is with one transaction. Cool. And then the next one is lots of transactions. And all those tests have now passed. How are we going for time? We're at 7:15. Cool. So that's the quick demo of how mocking can really help you test your front end without talking to a test environment. I imagine we do something similar on web. There's just different frameworks that you use with different tech stacks. And I think that is all there. I do have a follow-up presentation, but I'll share slides and a blog post to that later as well. One of the benefits of building out this mocking profile is most of the people who work here at Colonial First State don't have accounts with Colonial First State. But we want to provide support access to view the different accounts in different states. So we've now released this debug build internally. So the whole company can now actually test our app without ever having an account. It's just when we push the builds to production, we don't include any of that debug stuff. So our front end customers, our actual customers, never see all this test harness and test framework content at all. But yeah, I will share these slides and a follow-up blog post on how this all fits in as part of our overall testing strategy for mobile as well. Are there any questions?
Where are these questions coming? Is it in the Slack channel or?
There are some stuff on Twitch. I'm monitoring the chat on the Meet.
They'd want to block your views. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But please don't share some of these screenshots because this app is not officially released yet, even though I'm probably going to put the talk on YouTube anyway, and I'll see what happens. I think we'll see. But other than that, I mean, like normally at the end of a meetup, we'll tend to do a job announcement. or other community events. I would recommend if you're looking to gain any public speaking skills and you're a female or underrepresented group, Yale Diversity, we've got open calls for presentations, a diversity scholarship. So if you want to get a full one-day training on how to become a better public speaker, I would recommend applying for some of the speaker training. If you're underrepresented in tech, it's really good training for public speaking. And we've had a lot of our new voices in tech partners also present at Yale conferences. So there are a bunch of Yale conferences coming up as well. If you want to learn about functional programming, Yale Lambda Jam, I think, is happening in Brisbane. If you're interested in exploring more data science, there's Yale Data happening in Melbourne. And if anyone has any jobs or if they're looking for jobs, please add a comment to either this in Twitch or on YouTube when we do post it.
So, Sam,
Yes.
we have a question from Manila.
Ah, cool. Shoot.
Hello. Just a question. When using XUI test or espresso, is it flaky? Or if you encounter flakiness, then how often?
We get exposed to more flakiness based on the CBA network. All of these tests that we've built, they tend to run every time we have a pull request and every time we do a build, so at least 2 to 3 times a day. If they are flaky, we get annoyed. We do have some end-to-end tests that are written in Appium because we can't easily automate biometric login testing on mobile apps using XEUI test or Kotlin. And those tests are definitely more flakier because they're written in Java, and the software engineers we work with don't want to touch those test cases with a 10-foot pole.
Another question, is the learning curve for QAs to learn Swift or Java to create those test cases, is it steep?
I would say it's steeper than trying to get up to speed with something like Cypress testing for web. I think there's the tools for getting up to speed as a QA engineer on web are a lot more evolved, and there's a lot more tutorials, and there's just a wider community. I would say like trying to get up to speed with both Kotlin and Swift at the same time has been something I've personally struggled with, and I still feel like I'm not doing a good job of either of those.
Okay, thank you.
Android, you're using the same combination as Kotlin.
Yes, so Android is Kotlin, where we decided native, and we're using Swift on iOS.
And Swift is Objective-C or what is
No, Swift is Apple's new language. Both Kotlin and Swift are fairly similar in terms of architecture. You can introduce functional programming concepts. You can do pure lambdas and functions in both Swift and Kotlin if you really want to. But they're more like Google and Apple's response to trying to either bridge Objective-C into a new paradigm or Java into a new paradigm as well. They're just what those companies have learned from their old languages incorporated into a newer stack.
And the syntax, is it similar, the programming syntax?
For Objective-C and Swift?
For Swift and Kotlin.
Generally, the syntax can be quite similar. If you've got two developers who are closely aligned, writing both side by side, they can review each other's code. So our Android engineer does have a background in Swift development here and does do code review on the iOS code base, but he doesn't actually check out that code locally and build it. I think that's where getting involved with that process, I can help both Android and iOS just by learning how to use the IDEs and how to build locally means I'm doing more than what the other mobile engineers are doing for each other.
I just read a question in that, wow, at what point did we introduce Cypress? in our pipeline. So Cypress is at integration level. It's running pre-deployment. And once the test pass, the deployment goes real.
Cool. I think I'm going to stop the recording there. I'm a little concerned that didn't work because my background image is still stuck on the web there, but
Oh wow!
might have just lost the whole recording.
So only the audio.
We've got one in Manila and Sydney.
Okay, if there's a backup, that'd be great. Because I think my OBS just shat itself.
All good. Okay, thanks
Great.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining. We're just going to call it there and see if we can
Just do what you gotta